The Isola Bergamasca, Bergamo Island, is a triangle of land enclosed by the rivers Adda and Brembo and the slopes of Monte Canto Basso. It is from the hilly region that our journey to learn about the natural, artistic and historical treasures of the northern part of our local area starts. The sanctuary, dedicated to the Nativity of the Virgin Mary, better known as the Sanctuary of Our Lady of the Castle, built where there was once a fortress, stands at the top of an impressive flight of more than 500 steps in Ambivere. According to popular tradition, in an unspecified period, Our Lady saved some French soldiers who were barricaded in the castle without provisions by making a spring of fresh water gush from the earth. The present church was built at the end of the 17th century on the place where an older building had stood, as shown by a ruined fresco on the Eternal Apse depicting Our Lady on the throne with the child, which can be attributed to the 15th or early 16th century. The single nave interior has finely crafted paintings and a refined serrassi organ from the 18th century. Ambivere has origins that are lost in time. It has an interesting centre characterised by historical cafes and restaurants listed by the Lombardy region, such as the Café del Fiola and the Trattoria Visconti, where the typical Bergamo cuisine can be enjoyed, as in several other restaurants on the island. You should definitely take the opportunity to taste our traditional dishes, accompanied by Valcalepio PDO wines from the local vineyards on the slopes of Monte Canto, all served with polenta made with flour produced on the island. This is one of the local excellences. The village of Mapello has ancient origins, as shown by a document dated in May 774. The two towers, built in medieval times, are of considerable historic importance and represent, together with some remains of the fortifications from that period, a living memory of events in the village. Mapello was the scene of many battles and did not find peace until 1859 under the newly formed Kingdom of Italy. Numerous mansions and historical villas dot the village. The parish church of St. Michael stands in a panoramic position. Built towards the end of the 18th century in place of a previous place of worship dating back to the 12th century, it was originally used as the chapel of the medieval castle. organ built in 1873 by the firm Locatelli from Bergamo can be admired inside. The frescoes and the paintings decorating the nave are of considerable importance, in particular the painting of the Crucifixion, a fine work by Carlo Ceresa in 1641. After leaving the parish church, the very old Marian shrine of Prada is well worth a visit, approached along the picturesque tree-lined drive 500 metres long. A first oratory was probably built here as early as the 14th century, to then be completely rebuilt at the end of the 15th century. Popular memory hands down the tradition according to which the Virgin Mary appeared to a young girl, leaving as a sign a spring of miraculous water, which healed many people who were ill. These extraordinary events came to an end when a woman among these people dared to wash her dog with the blessed water. In the early 18th century, the devotion dwindled and the decision was taken to wall up the niche with the fresco of Our Lady. During the work, the scaffolding collapsed, and this was interpreted as a sign from heaven, and the fresco once again became an object of worship. The interior is decorated with frescoes painted in 1959 by Natale Bertuletti, an artist of Mapello. Not very far away there stands one of the finest mansions on the island, built in the first half of the 18th century for the Zanchi counts. Villa Gromo stands in an amphitheatre of century-old trees. In the middle of the 19th century, the aristocratic Finardi family became the owners of the building, and then later, Mrs. Stamper. She had the Porter's Lodge built in Swiss style next to the present-day entrance. In 1947, the complex was bought by the Antona Traversi family, whose heirs are still the owners today. In the U-shaped plan, which is common in 18th century Lombardy villas, the wings are slightly lower than the central body, although they have the same number of floors, making us suppose that the building could have been built in different periods. The lower part of the central body also has a wide arcade closed by a sandstone balustrade. The facade ends with an attic with 3 oval windows and is framed by 2 wings of the building. The interior consists of a series of rooms frescoed with symbolic figures, caryatids, mock balustrades, views of columns, aerial views and trompe-l'oeil silhouettes and frames. They can be dated to between 1730 and 1770. The central drawing room is dominated by the fresco in the centre of the vault ceiling, illustrating the Judgment of Paris. A few kilometres away, the parish church of Isola, dedicated to St. Victor, can be admired. According to a local tradition, the collegiate and baptismal church of the Bergamo island stood amongst the ruins of a pagan temple dedicated to the goddess of fortune. Work started on the present-day church in 1537 under the master mason Francesco da Bergamo. The Gothic portal with a pointed arch is decorated with artificial stone elements. Inside, the ceiling is made from wooden beams and terracotta with tempera decorations supported by a load-bearing structure of 4 big pointed arches. Around the mid-17th century, the nave was enriched by a magnificent stucco decoration, which partially covers the ancient 16th century frescoes. On the lateral walls above the ledge, Carnelli painted frescoes in 1905 depicting the patron saints of the parishes of the Pieve. Of note are several paintings by the artist Carlo Ceresa, including the Pietà, the Baptism of Jesus, dated 1634 or 35, and Our Lady of the Rosary, St. Dominic and St. Carlo Borromeo of 1650. Works by other important artists are also present in the church. Behind the main altar, the great altarpiece by Enea Salmeggia, known as Talpino, of 1625, showing the Virgin Mary in glory and the patron saints of Bergamo, can also be admired. At the centre of the single nave, on the left, there is the baptistry with the 17th century font colour, shaped like a small temple. The organ is a Cerasi from 1854. A visit to the oratory of the Very Holy Annunciation in Cabernetti is worth a visit, where there is one of the masterpieces of Cristoforo Roncalli, known as Pomerancio, the painting of Our Lady with the Child between angels and saints of 1595. The Garden of Peace, Inaugurated on the 11th of October in 2013, is an area of greenery to help pilgrims enter into harmony with the spirituality of St. John the 23rd. There is a majestic and seraphic statue of Pope John in the centre of the garden. Around the cement case that protects the statue of the Pope, there are some wooden sleepers from the memorial of the Shoah in Milan, commemorating his enormous commitment on the behalf of the Jews. The crypt, renovated on the 50th anniversary of the death of Pope John, is the most intimate and intense place on this journey through faith, with the cast of his face and his hand in gilded bronze, made immediately after his death by Giacomo Manzu, and the crucifix that he wanted facing him in his bedroom. This is where Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli was born on the 25th of November in 1881. The building has stayed almost the same as in the period when the large Roncalli family lived there. The importance of the family is summarized with the bronze sculpture entitled Home of Goodness, Source of Life, by the artist Carlo Bagliana, which is in the courtyard. On the upper floor, there is his bedroom and his sister's room, together with some furniture, and the desk where Angelo Roncalli wrote the first pages of The Diary of the Soul. Papa J23 can be visited in the building with a multimedia route covering 400 square meters, which recounts the life of the good Pope through 4 thematic rooms with a system of projections and animations. In 1958, Pope John the 23rd left the house where he was born and an adjacent piece of land to the missionaries of the PIME, which is the Pontifical Institute for Foreign Missions, for them to build a missionary seminary. The first stone was blessed on the 18th of March in 1963. In the gallery of stained glass windows there is a bronze statue which reproduces the figure of the Pope by the sculptor Carlo Pisi. On the upper floor of the seminary there is the church, and next to it some rooms with ex votos brought by pilgrims as evidence of grace received. Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli was baptized in the Church of St. Mary of Brusico, in front of his birthplace. The building dates back to the second half of the 15th century. The baptismal font is today the destination of countless worshippers who leave here their messages of invocation and prayers to the Pope. In 2005, the tombstone that covered the Pope's burial place was transported from the Vatican grottos. Camartino was the summer home of Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli between 1925 and 1958, the year he was elected Pope. The House of Memory holds many documents and objects that belonged to the Pope, and he himself decided how each room was to be arranged. After the death of John XXIII, his secretary, Mons Loris Capovilla, completed the collection and the arrangement of the countless souvenirs that belonged to the Pope. At the entrance, a welcoming room leads into the place which Pope John defined my dear nest in Sotto il Monte. upper floor, the sitting room, the study and the bedroom, as it was at the time of the death of the Pope John, transported here from the Vatican City with the private chapel. The place is looked after by the Poverel sisters, the same nuns who were close to Roncalli in Venice and in the Vatican. The ancient abbey of Sant'Egidio in Fontenella, founded in 1080 by a nobleman from Bergamo, Alberto di Prezzate, is also in Sotto il Monte, in a panoramic and hilly area. The monastery dedicated to Sant'Egidio played a very important socio-economic role in the whole of the island in the 12th century. In the cloister, there is a small chapel which contains, as legend has it, the tomb of Tiberga, the sister of the founder, Alberto de Prezzate. The three apses are perfectly orientated towards the east. They have single lancet windows surrounded by decorations with geometric patterns. The plan of the basilica is made up of three naves, covered by exposed wooden trusses. Traces of the oldest paintings are visible in the presbytery. Renaissance frescoes are to be found in the conche, where the figure of Christ's Pantocrator and a mandorla stands out in the centre, surrounded by the four evangelists in round frames and their symbolic depictions. The large fresco on the wall of the left nave, in the form of a polypitch, is also from the Renaissance. The small fresco on the left of the entrance with St. Antony Abbot and St. Rocco, dated 1532, and the one on the right conche of the apse, painted in 1574 by Cristoforo Bachenis of Averara, are later works. Villa Acquaroli in Carvico is a splendid 18th century aristocratic dwelling characterized by a huge park with century-old trees. Nature stretches out here in a large green oasis with romantic paths edged by rose bushes, reached by a long avenue of poplars at the entrance, which opens up to a solemn and enchanting view. Villa Acquaroli was built in the early 18th century for the De Vecchi counts and remained their property until 1850. It then passed into the hands of the grandson of Countess Flaminia, Count Ottavio Morlani, who renovated it. In 1912, it was sold to Count Bonzi, who received the actress Claretta Calamai there. The Count, to see the actress, is said to have landed directly with his aeroplane on the entrance drive. At the time, the drive was much longer and went as far as the church. In 1950, the villa was bought by the Bisutti family, who had major renovation work done on the interior, but leaving the original 18th century facade intact. Surmounted by the coat of arms of the Morlani counts, the property currently belongs to the Acquaroli family. Very close to Villa Acquarioli, there is the municipal park of Seraglio Carvico. In the park there stands the Casa degli Alpini, House of the Alpine Regiments. It was built with original material from the 18th century and which houses the Museum of the History of the Alpine Regiments. In the park there is a piece of art by the artist Giuliano Mauri. The installation, entitled Reactor of the Canto, it recalls a reactor in its shape. On entering, the emotions and frictions that are formed in any reactor with atomic particles can converge. In this case, the particles are mental. This position can release energy if attentive to the surrounding nature, especially the picturesque spot where it stands, which is on the slopes of Monte Canto. We have told you the history of the people and the towns at the foot of Monte Canto, its beauty spots and traditions, but the island has much more. The rivers Adda and Brembo, which with their presence have marked and influenced the places, the traditions and the populations that have lived here thanks to their water.